A man about to get married receives a disturbing warning from his own mother. To uncover the truth, he fakes a trip and transforms his home into a secret surveillance operation. What he witnesses in silence reveals a cold, calculated conspiracy to destroy him. Now he must choose between the love he idealized and the survival of the only family he has left. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The afternoon sun bathed the gardens of the Montgomery estate in the luxurious gated community in the Hamptons, just outside New York City. Oliver Montgomery, at 45, watched the staff moving about, preparing everything for the engagement dinner that would take place that evening. As one of the biggest pharmaceutical entrepreneurs in the United States, Oliver had amassed a fortune few Americans could dream. But what truly worried him at that moment was the health of his mother, Mrs. Eleanor. "Son, I need to talk to you." The weak but determined voice of Mrs. Eleanor made Oliver turn to find his mother in her wheelchair, being pushed by Constance, the housekeeper who had served the family for over 3 decades. "Mother, you should be resting. The party is still 4 hours away," Oliver said, hurrying to help his mother. "I'll rest later, my son. Right now, we need to talk about Victoria." Oliver sighed. It wasn't the first time his mother had expressed reservations about his fiancée. Victoria Cavendish, 32, a model and socialite, had entered his life like a hurricane 8 months ago, and the marriage proposal had occurred after only 6 months of dating. The celebrity press couldn't talk about anything else. "Constance, leave us alone, please," Mrs. Eleanor requested. When the housekeeper stepped away, Mrs. Eleanor took her son's hand. "Don't you think you're moving too fast? You barely know this young woman." "Mother, we've already discussed this. I love Victoria. She makes me happier than I've been since Marion left us." Marion, his late wife, had passed away 5 years ago after a long illness. Oliver had thrown himself into his work ever since, until he met Victoria at a charity event. "Son, it's not just the rush that worries me. It's the way she looks at me when you're not around, how she treats Constance and the other stuff. She's not who she appears to be." Oliver ran a hand through the graying hair at his temples, a sign of his growing frustration. "You've always been suspicious of everyone. It was the same with Marion, remember? And then you two became great friends." Marion was a light, Oliver. "This woman, there's something in her eyes, something cold. Have you ever noticed how she completely changes when you enter the room? It's like she's a different person." A heavy silence fell between mother and son. Oliver loved his mother deeply, but he was also in love with Victoria, or at least he believed he was. "Look, I know you want what's best for me, but you need to trust my judgment this time. Just promise me one thing," Mrs. Eleanor insisted, gripping her son's hand with surprising strength for someone in her frail state. "Watch her when she thinks. You're not looking. See how she treats people who can't benefit her." At that moment, Oliver's phone buzzed. It was a text from Victoria saying she would arrive in an hour to get ready for the party. He put his phone away, lost in thought. "I have an idea," he finally said. "Next week I have that trip to Germany. I'll say I need to leave earlier, tomorrow in fact, and I'll ask her to stay here and take care of you. That way, I can see how you two get along without me." Mrs. Eleanor shook her head. "It won't work. She'll know she's being tested and will be on her best behavior." "Then what do you suggest?" The matriarch's eyes glinted with a spark of her old cunning. "Say you're going, but stay. Watch her without her knowing." Oliver stared at his mother, surprised by the suggestion. "You want me to spy on my own fiancé? Isn't that unethical?" "What's unethical is marrying someone with ulterior motives, son. If she truly loves you, there's nothing to fear." Before Oliver could respond, Constance reappeared, announcing that the florist had arrived with the arrangements for the party. Oliver helped settle his mother back in her room before attending to the vendors, but the conversation lingered in his mind. Hours later, during the engagement dinner, as 50 guests celebrated the future wedding, Oliver watched Victoria interact with his friends and family. She was stunning in a red dress that highlighted her beauty. Her smile lit up the room as she moved among the guests with the grace of a princess. "Everything is perfect, my love," Victoria whispered when she approached him. "Is your mother feeling well? I noticed she left early." "Yes, she's just tired. You know how it is, her age." "Of course. I'll stop by her room later to say goodnight." Victoria smiled and kissed him softly before circulating among the guests again. Oliver watched her walk away, remembering his mother's words. Was it possible he was so blinded by love that he couldn't see his fiancée's true face? At the other end of the hall, Richard Montgomery, his best friend and the company's CFO, approached with a glass of champagne. Who would have thought the most eligible bachelor in the American corporate world would finally surrender? Richard joked. "Victoria is a lucky woman." "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" Richard frowned, surprised by the question. "Why the doubt now, getting cold feet?" Oliver shook his head, unable to share his concerns. Not even his best friend would understand what was going through his mind at that moment. "Nothing like that, just the pressure of the moment." The party continued late into the night. At one point, Oliver realized he hadn't seen Victoria for a while. Curious, he searched for her in the hall but couldn't find her. He decided to check if she had gone to see his mother as she had promised. As he approached Mrs. Eleanor's room on the upper floor, he heard Victoria's voice coming from the adjacent hallway. She was speaking on the phone in a low voice, almost a whisper. "It's practically a sure thing. After the wedding, it'll be a matter of time until we get everything. Yes, the old woman is still a nuisance, but not for much longer. No, he doesn't suspect a thing. Men in love are so predictable." Oliver froze, feeling the blood run cold in his veins. Before Victoria could notice his presence, he silently retreated and returned to the party, his heart heavy and his mind in a whirlwind. Later that night, after all the guests had left and Victoria had gone to her own apartment on the Upper East Side, Oliver sought out Constance. "I need your help, Constance. It's about Victoria." The housekeeper nodded with a look that said she understood perfectly what was coming. "What do you need, sir? Tomorrow I'll announce that I have to travel to Germany urgently, but in reality, I'm not going anywhere. I want you to help me observe how Victoria behaves when she thinks I'm not around, especially with my mother." "You want me to be your eyes and ears, sir." "More than that, Constance. I want you to help me set up a full surveillance operation. I'm going to install additional cameras in the house, and I'll stay in the guest house out back. No one can know I'm still on the property." "Not even Mr. Richard, sir?" Oliver thought for a moment. "No one, Constance. The fewer people who know, the better." "And if Mrs. Eleanor is right about Miss Victoria, what will you do?" Oliver looked out the window at the New York City night, the city lights twinkling in the distance like earthbound stars. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family." The next morning, Oliver meticulously executed his plan. He called the security technician early to install additional discrete cameras at strategic points in the mansion, especially in the rooms his mother frequented. The system was connected to a monitor in the guest house bedroom, located at the back of the property, separated from the main building by an extensive garden. "Constance, make sure the room is stocked with water, food, and everything I might need for a few days," Oliver instructed as he supervised the camera installation. The housekeeper nodded, still visibly uncomfortable with the situation. "Are you sure about this, sir? Spying on your own fiancé?" "It's not spying, Constance. It's a precaution. If my mother is wrong, no one will ever know about this plan, and I'll proceed with the wedding with a clear conscience." At 10 in the morning, Oliver made a call to Victoria, informing her of his urgent trip to Germany. He explained that an important contract needed to be finalized in person and that he would be away for at least a week. "But darling, what about our buffet tasting on Friday?" Victoria protested. "We can't postpone it again. The chef has already rescheduled twice." "I know it's complicated, but I trust your taste. Choose whatever you think is best," Oliver replied, carefully watching her reaction on the video call. "And your mother? You know she and I are still getting used to each other." "That's precisely why I wanted to ask you a favor. Could you come stay at the estate while I'm away? I know your presence would put Mother at ease. You could take the opportunity to get to know each other better." There was an almost imperceptible hesitation before Victoria broke into a radiant smile. "Of course, my love, I'd do anything to see you happy. When do you leave?" My flight is at 2 p.m. I'm already on my way to the airport. So soon? I won't even get to say a proper goodbye. We'll make up for it when I get back, Oliver promised. Oh, and Victoria, thank you for taking care of my mother. It means a lot to me. After the call, Oliver packed his suitcase as if he were really traveling. He instructed his driver, Sebastian, to take him to the airport where he would enter the terminal. The plan was that once inside, he would exit through another door and take a taxi back to the estate, entering discreetly through the back of the property where Constance would be waiting for him. Before leaving, Oliver went to his mother's room to say goodbye. He found Mrs. Eleanor sitting by the window, watching the garden with attentive eyes, despite her physical frailty. You were right, Mother. I overheard Victoria on the phone last night during the party. She didn't sound like the person I know. Mrs. Eleanor nodded slightly, unsurprised. What are you going to do now, son? I'm going to find out the truth. I need to know who the woman I intended to marry really is. Oliver knelt beside his mother's chair, holding her hands. Can you act normally when she's here, without letting on that we know anything? Son, I've spent my entire life reading people. I know a snake when I see one, even when it's wearing sheep's clothing. You can count on me. At 1 p.m., the driver dropped Oliver off at JFK International Airport. By 3 p.m., he was already back at the estate, slipping silently through the back door where Constance was waiting. Mrs. Eleanor is resting, the housekeeper informed him in a low voice, leading him to the guest house. Miss Victoria called to say she'll arrive around 5 p.m. The room had been transformed into a small surveillance center. A monitor displayed the feeds from all the cameras in the mansion, and there was an intercom system that allowed Oliver to hear what was happening in the main rooms. Food, water, and other supplies were strategically arranged, so he could remain there for days if necessary. How will we justify the new cameras if Victoria asks? Oliver questioned. I've already thought of that, sir. We'll say they were installed at your request before the trip to ensure Mrs. Eleanor's safety while you were away. Oliver nodded, impressed with Constance's foresight. While waiting for Victoria to arrive, he watched a Yankees game on the small TV in the room, trying to distract himself from the anxiety that grew with each passing minute. At 5:15 p.m., the doorman announced Victoria's arrival. Through the cameras, Oliver saw her enter the mansion with 2 large suitcases, as if she planned to stay much longer than a simple week. Constance received her formally. Good afternoon, Miss Victoria. The main guest room has been prepared for you. Thank you, Constance. Victoria looked around, noticing the new cameras. What are these cameras? They weren't here before. The master had them installed this morning before he left, for Mrs. Eleanor's safety. Victoria studied the cameras for a moment, a shadow of annoyance quickly passing over her face, before being replaced by her usual charming smile. How thoughtful of him. Is Mrs. Eleanor awake? I'd like to greet her. I believe so, ma'am. She's in the solarium as usual at this time. As Constance took Victoria's bags upstairs, the fiancé headed to the solarium, a large bright room on the west side of the mansion where Mrs. Eleanor often spent her afternoons. Oliver adjusted the volume on the sound system, anxious to hear the interaction between the 2 women. Victoria entered the solarium with a radiant smile. Mrs. Eleanor, how are you feeling today? Oliver asked me to stay here with you while he's in Germany. The elderly woman looked up from the book she was reading. I'm fine, Victoria, so my son has already left. Yes, he should be boarding now. Victoria sat in a nearby armchair. I thought we could use this time to get to know each other better. After all, we'll officially be family soon. Of course, dear. Nothing would please me more. Mrs. Eleanor's tone was pleasant, but her eyes remained alert. The conversation remained light for a few minutes, with Victoria asking about the lady's medications and routine. Everything seemed perfectly normal until Victoria's cell phone rang. She checked the screen, and her expression subtly changed. Excuse me, Mrs. Eleanor. I need to take this call. It's from work. Victoria moved into the hallway, believing she was out. Of the elderly woman's hearing range, Oliver turned the volume up to maximum to catch the conversation. He just left. Yes, I'll be at the mansion all week. It's the perfect chance to access his office and find those documents. No, the old woman doesn't suspect a thing. She's just a sick lady. Raphael, don't you understand? This is our big chance. With the power of attorney he left me to handle wedding arrangements, we can do so much more. Oliver's stomach turned. Raphael. Who was this man? And what documents was Victoria looking for? When Victoria returned to the solarium, her mask of sweetness was back in place. Sorry for the interruption, Mrs. Eleanor. Where were we? You were telling me about your plans for after the wedding, the elderly woman replied calmly. Oh, yes. I was thinking that maybe you could consider moving to that retirement clinic in the Berkshires. The mountain air would do wonders for your health, and you'd be surrounded by excellent doctors around the clock. Mrs. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Move? But this is my home. I've lived here for over 40 years. Of course, I understand your attachment, but think of everyone's well-being. Oliver and I will need our privacy as a couple, and you'd have specialized care 24 hours a day. Victoria, dear, I appreciate your concern, but I believe that decision is up to me and my son. A flash of irritation crossed Victoria's face before she could control it. Naturally. I'm just thinking of your well-being. Later, during dinner served in Mrs. Eleanor's room, Victoria insisted on helping personally, dismissing Constance. Oliver watched tensely through the monitor. Take your medicine, Mrs. Eleanor, Victoria said, handing the lady a glass of water and some pills. These aren't my usual pills, the elderly woman observed, examining them. Yes, they are. Constance must have forgotten to sort them correctly. These are the ones that were in your medicine box. Mrs. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, but ended up taking the pills under Victoria's watchful eye. Good night, Mrs. Eleanor. Rest well, Victoria said, turning off the light as she left. As soon as the door closed, Oliver saw his mother discreetly spit the pills into a napkin, hiding it under her pillow. A chill ran down the businessman's spine. What was Victoria trying to do? An hour later, when the mansion was quiet, Oliver saw Victoria, now dressed completely in black, head to his office on the ground floor. She typed in the security system code with surprising familiarity and entered, closing the door behind her. Through the camera installed in the office, Oliver watched her go straight to the safe hidden behind a painting. How did she know about the safe, and how did she know the combination she was now entering with such confidence? Oliver's blood ran cold as the safe opened, and Victoria began photographing one by one the confidential documents of his companies. Meanwhile, on the phone placed on the desk, she maintained an active video call. See this, Raphael. We have everything we need now. The prenuptial agreement, the offshore account records, everything. After the wedding, it'll be like taking candy from a baby. A male voice replied through the phone. You're brilliant, Victoria. When this is all over, it'll be the two of us, rich for the rest of our lives. And what about the old woman? Victoria smiled, a cold, calculating smile that Oliver had never seen before. Don't worry about her. Soon she'll just be a sad, closed chapter in the life of our dear entrepreneur. Oliver barely slept that night. The images of Victoria rummaging through his office and speaking coldly about his mother tormented him until dawn. When the first rays of sun pierced the guest house window, he was already sitting before the monitors, watching the activity in the mansion. Constance was the first to rise, as always. Through the cameras, Oliver saw her prepare Mrs. Eleanor's breakfast with her usual care. When the housekeeper entered the elderly lady's room, Oliver activated the audio system. Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. How are you feeling today? Like someone who pretended to take pills, she shouldn't have, the lady replied, a glint of cunning in her tired eyes. She showed Constance the napkin with the pills. I want you to have these analyzed. I'm almost certain they aren't my usual medication. Constance nodded, putting the napkin in her pocket. I'll do it immediately, ma'am. Dr. Alistair can help us without raising suspicion. Dr. Frederick Alistair had been the family's trusted physician for decades, almost a personal friend of Oliver's. Miss Victoria is still asleep, Constance continued. I heard her on the phone late into the night. It sounded like she was arranging something with someone. She doesn't suspect anything? I don't believe so, ma'am. She acts as if she owns the place. Mrs. Eleanor adjusted herself in bed with some difficulty. Constance, I need you to help me get ready today. I want to look presentable. Are you going out, ma'am? No, my dear, but I have a feeling we'll be having some interesting visitors today. Mrs. Eleanor's intuition rarely failed her. Around 11 a.m., while Victoria swam nonchalantly in the mansion's Olympic-sized pool, the doorman announced the arrival of a visitor, Raphael Astor, who claimed to have an appointment with Miss Victoria. Oliver felt his whole body tense. So this was the mysterious Raphael. He adjusted the cameras to get a better view of the visitor's arrival. A tall man, about 35, with dark hair and well-dressed, entered the mansion. Constance received him with studied formality. "Miss Victoria is at the pool, sir. Shall I inform her of your arrival?" "No need, I know the way," Raphael replied with a familiarity that suggested it wasn't his first visit to the estate. Raphael headed to the pool area, where Victoria was swimming gracefully. Upon seeing him, she quickly got out of the water, wrapping herself in a bathrobe. "Are you crazy? What are you doing here?" she hissed, looking around nervously. "Relax, darling. Your little fiancé is thousands of miles away," Raphael replied with an arrogant smile, pulling her in for a kiss she didn't resist. Oliver felt a knot in his stomach, seeing the intimacy between them. It wasn't just a financial scheme, it was a complete betrayal. "Even so, we agreed you wouldn't come here." "It's too risky," Victoria protested, but without real conviction. "I needed to see the progress for myself, so did you get the documents?" Victoria smiled, proud of herself. "I photographed everything last night. Contracts, accounts, passwords. The idiot trusts me so much he even gave me access to the safe months ago for emergencies." She made air quotes with her fingers, laughing. "And the old woman? Any problems?" "Nothing we can't handle. I've started giving her subtle doses of sleeping pills with her medication. I'll gradually increase the dosage. When it happens, everyone will think it was natural, given her fragile health." Raphael nodded, satisfied. "Perfect. And then you just console the grieving widower, go through with the wedding, and in a few months, file for divorce and take half the fortune. As long as you alter the prenuptial agreement as you promised," Victoria reminded him. "The one he wants me to sign is ridiculously restrictive." "Consider it done. I brought the altered version with me. We just need to replace the original in the safe." They kissed again, more intensely this time. Oliver looked away, disgusted and hurt. How could he have been so blind? "Let's go to the room," Victoria whispered. "We need to celebrate properly." "And the old woman?" "I gave her a special tea an hour ago. She should be sleeping soundly by now." The two headed inside the mansion, to the guest room where Victoria was staying. Oliver quickly switched between cameras, following them. At the same time, he checked his mother's room and felt a tightness in his chest, seeing that Mrs. Eleanor seemed to be truly asleep, or worse. Without a second thought, Oliver grabbed his cell phone and called Constance. "Constance, check on my mother immediately. I think Victoria gave her something." In a few minutes, the housekeeper silently entered Mrs. Eleanor's room. To Oliver's relief, the elderly lady was only pretending to be asleep. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "Constance," he whispered, approaching the bed. Mrs. Eleanor opened her eyes, winking conspiratorially. "Just pretending, my dear. I threw out the tea when she wasn't looking. Years of watching soap operas are finally paying off." Constance suppressed a nervous laugh. "Your son just called, worried about you. Tell him I'm fine, but warn him that those two are plotting something big. That Raphael fellow brought forged documents." Meanwhile, in the guest room, Raphael and Victoria were discussing the final details of their plan while exchanging caresses. "The original contract states you get nothing in a divorce before 5 years of marriage," Raphael explained, showing documents he'd taken from his briefcase. "This altered version I prepared says you're entitled to 50% of all assets, regardless of the length of the marriage." "And how will we replace the original?" "He keeps one copy in the safe and another at the law firm. We already know how to swap the one in the safe. The one at the firm will be trickier, but I have a contact inside who can help us for a small fortune." Victoria ran her fingers over Raphael's face. "Always so efficient, that's why I love you." Raphael smiled, kissing her. Again. "And I love your ambition. Together we'll be unbeatable." "How long after the wedding should I file for divorce?" "Ideally between 6 months and a year. Long enough not to raise too much suspicion, but not so long that you have to put up with that old man any longer than necessary." Oliver felt his blood boil. Old man? He was only 45, while Raphael looked to be just over 35. The age difference between him and Victoria wasn't that significant. Clearly, they saw him only as a means to get rich. At that moment, the mansion's security system issued an alert. The external cameras had detected suspicious movement near the back wall. Oliver quickly switched to the exterior cameras and saw a figure moving among the trees in the garden. Was it another accomplice? Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Mrs. Eleanor got up with difficulty and, leaning on her cane, headed into the hallway. She was determined to confront the conspirators. Constance tried to stop her. "Ma'am, please, it's not safe. The master will be furious if you put yourself at risk." "My son needs concrete proof, Constance, and I need to see with my own eyes what that viper is plotting in my house." With a surprising determination for someone in her state of health, Mrs. Eleanor advanced down the hall toward the room where Victoria and Raphael were. Oliver, watching everything on the monitors, panicked. His mother was putting herself directly in danger. Without a second thought, Oliver ran out of the guest house toward the main mansion. He could no longer hide. He had to protect his mother at all costs. Just as Mrs. Eleanor reached the door of the guest room, a loud noise was heard from the ground floor. The safe alarm had gone off. Someone was trying to force it. Victoria and Raphael separated immediately, alarmed. "What is that?" Victoria asked, pale. "Sounds like the safe alarm," Raphael replied, already gathering his documents hastily. "Someone might have discovered what we're doing." "Impossible. There's no one here but the old woman and the staff." At that moment, the bedroom door opened, revealing Mrs. Eleanor, upright and dignified despite her physical frailty. "You're mistaken, my dear," the elderly woman said in a surprisingly firm voice. "There are far more people in this house than you imagine." Victoria paled, while Raphael took a defensive stance. "Mrs. Eleanor, you should be resting," Victoria stammered, trying to compose herself. "Let me introduce my cousin, Raphael." "Spare me your lies, girl. I've heard enough to know exactly who you are and what you're planning." Raphael took a threatening step forward. "You don't know who you're dealing with, old woman. I suggest you go back to your room and forget what you saw here." "Or what, young man? You'll give me another one of your special teas?" Mrs. Eleanor's tone was defiant. Before Raphael could answer, another figure appeared in the hallway, panting and with a face contorted in fury. "Get away from my mother," Oliver ordered, stepping forward to stand between Mrs. Eleanor and the stunned couple. Victoria nearly fainted from shock. "Oliver, but you were in Germany. How?" "Surprise, darling," he replied in a cold voice. "It seems your little conspiracy ends here." The silence that followed was so thick it could be cut with a knife. Victoria was the first to regain her composure, her face quickly transforming from surprise to a mask of false indignation. "Oliver, my love, this isn't what it looks like," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "This is just my cousin Raphael, who came to visit me and—" "Enough lies," Oliver thundered, his normally calm face now twisted with rage. "I heard everything. I saw everything. The cameras, remember? The ones I had installed to protect my mother." Raphael, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried a more aggressive approach. "Spying on your own fiancée? That's illegal, you know. Invasion of privacy." Oliver laughed humorlessly. "Do you really want to discuss legality? You who forged documents and planned to poison an elderly woman?" Mrs. Eleanor remained impassive beside her son, her presence a silent accusation against the two conspirators. Constance appeared in the hallway, accompanied by Sebastian, the driver, and two more of the mansion's security guards. "Sebastian, please escort these two to the living room," Oliver ordered. "Don't let them leave the property or use their phones." "You can't do this," Victoria protested, the veneer of her false personality completely shattered. "You have no proof of anything." "I have recordings of all your conversations since yesterday," Oliver replied coldly, "including your plans to alter my prenuptial agreement and your scheme to harm my mother." He hesitated, unable to utter harsher words in Mrs. Eleanor's presence. The elderly woman gently placed a hand on her son's arm, a silent gesture of support. As Sebastian and the guards led Raphael and Victoria to the ground floor, Oliver turned to his mother. You should be resting. It was reckless to confront them alone. What was reckless was you falling for that adventuress, Mrs. Eleanor retorted, but her tone was gentle. Fortunately, your good sense has returned. Come on, I need you to lie down. It's been too much excitement for one day. Helping his mother back to her room, Oliver couldn't help but think how foolish he had been. Signs that now seemed obvious. Victoria's sudden interest in his finances, the rush to get married, the poorly disguised dislike for Mrs. Eleanor. He had ignored it all, blinded by what he believed was love. After settling his mother, Oliver went down to confront the conspirators. In the living room, Victoria and Raphael were sitting on the sofa, closely guarded by the security team. Victoria had been crying, leaving streaks of makeup on her perfect face, while Raphael maintained a calculating expression, clearly weighing his options. "I'll be direct," Oliver began, remaining standing to maintain the psychological advantage. "I have two options: turn you over to the police with all the evidence I've collected, or let you go on the condition that you never come near my family again." Raphael leaned forward. "Be reasonable, Montgomery. Nothing serious happened. Some inconvenient conversations, perhaps, but nothing that constitutes a real crime." "Attempted murder isn't a real crime?" Oliver asked in a dangerously calm voice. "Document forgery? Conspiracy to commit fraud?" "You have no way of proving we tried to poison your mother," Raphael challenged. "The pills Victoria gave my mother last night are being analyzed right now by Dr. Alistair. If they contain any harmful substance, that will be proof enough." Victoria began to sob harder. "Oliver, please, I was manipulated. Raphael convinced me to do all this. I really love you." The pathetic attempt at manipulation only increased the disgust Oliver felt. "Spare me the theatrics, Victoria. You played the part of the loving fiancé well for 8 months. The show is over." At that moment, Constance entered the room holding a phone. "Sir, it's Dr. Alistair," Oliver answered immediately. "Frederick, what did you find?" The doctor's grave voice was clear enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Oliver, the pills contained a high dose of benzodiazepines, far above the recommended amount for someone in Mrs. Eleanor's condition. With continued use, they could have caused severe respiratory depression, especially considering the other medications she already takes." All the color drained from Victoria's face. Raphael tried to maintain his composure, but his eyes betrayed his growing panic. "Thank you, Frederick. That confirms our suspicions," Oliver replied, then hung up. He faced the couple with barely contained contempt. "It seems we have evidence of attempted murder, after all." "This is ridiculous," Raphael protested, rising abruptly, only to be restrained by the guards. "Any decent lawyer will tear this apart. In minutes." "Perhaps," Oliver conceded, "but the scandal will destroy your reputations. I doubt you'll be able to keep your job, Raphael, after everyone finds out you tried to poison an elderly woman for money." For the first time, Raphael looked genuinely worried. Oliver knew from his previous investigations that he worked at a prestigious law firm in New York. A scandal of this magnitude would ruin his career. "What do you want?" Raphael finally asked, dropping the facade of indignation. "I want you both to disappear from my life and my mother's life permanently." Oliver went to his desk and picked up 2 envelopes. "Here are tickets to Miami leaving tonight, and enough cash to start over somewhere else. I advise you to take this generosity, because it's the only you'll receive from me." "And if we refuse to go?" Victoria challenged, regaining some of her audacity. "Then I'll call the police right now," Oliver replied, holding his cell phone. "And besides the criminal charges, I'll file civil suits against you for attempted fraud, emotional distress, and everything else my lawyers can find. I will destroy you financially for the rest of your lives." The ultimatum hung heavy in the air. After a tense moment, Raphael took the envelopes. "Let's go, Victoria, it's over." "But Raphael," she began to protest. "It's over," he repeated firmly. "We're lucky he's letting us walk away with just a warning." Victoria shot one last resentful look at Oliver before following Raphael out of the room. Sebastian was instructed to take them directly to the airport and confirm they boarded the flight. When he was finally alone, Oliver collapsed into an armchair, physically and emotionally exhausted. The adrenaline from the confrontation had passed, leaving him empty and numb. How could he have been so easily deceived? Shame and humiliation consumed him. Constance entered the room silently, bringing a cup of tea. "Are you all right, sir?" "No, Constance, I'm not," he admitted honestly. "But I will be, eventually. Mrs. Eleanor is asking for you. Tell her I'll be up shortly. I need a few minutes." When Constance left, Oliver closed his eyes, letting the reality of what had just happened hit him completely. His wedding, his plans for the future, everything had crumbled in a matter of hours. Yet amidst the pain he also felt a strange relief. He had discovered the truth before. It was too late. The phone rang again. It was Sebastian confirming that Victoria and Raphael had boarded the flight to Miami. At least that part of the nightmare was over. Oliver slowly climbed the stairs to his mother's room. He found her sitting in the armchair by the window, watching the sunset that painted the New York sky in shades of red and gold. "Are they gone?" Mrs. Eleanor asked without taking her eyes off the window. "Yes, Mother. Forever, I hope." "You did the right thing, son." She finally turned to face him, although I would have preferred to see them in jail. Oliver smiled faintly. "Me too. But a criminal trial would be long and draining, especially for you. Besides, Raphael is a lawyer. He'd find ways to delay and complicate everything." Mrs. Eleanor nodded, understanding the logic. "The important thing is that we're free of them, and you've learned a valuable lesson." "What's that? Never trust anyone?" "No, my son. You've learned to listen to your intuition and to value those who have always been by your side, in good times and bad." Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the day's events. "I feel like a fool, Mother. How did I not see what she really was?" "Love blinds us, son. It happens to even the smartest of us." Mrs. Eleanor reached out to touch her son's face. "But you're not the first to be deceived by a pretty face, and you certainly won't be the last." At that moment, Dr. Alistair arrived to examine Mrs. Eleanor. While the doctor did his work, Oliver retreated to his own room, where he spent hours reflecting on the recent events. The next day, Oliver gathered all the mansion's staff to thank them for their loyalty and discretion. Constance, in particular, received special praise for her crucial role in unmasking the conspiracy. "From today," Oliver announced, "we need to redouble our efforts in caring for my mother's health. I want to hire a professional nurse to assist with her daily care." "I already have some excellent recommendations," offered Dr. Alistair, who was at the meeting. "There's one nurse in particular, Louisa Campbell, who worked at Mount Sinai Hospital for years. She's extremely competent and discreet." "Excellent," Oliver agreed. "When can she start?" "We can schedule an interview for tomorrow if you wish." As life in the mansion slowly began to return to normal, Oliver couldn't help but wonder about the future. Victoria's betrayal had shaken his confidence, leaving scars that would take time to heal. However, amidst the pain and disillusionment, there was also a growing sense of gratitude for his mother's wisdom, his staff's loyalty, and the opportunity to start over. The next morning, while having coffee on the veranda overlooking the gardens, Oliver was informed that the nurse recommended by Dr. Alistair had arrived for the interview. He adjusted his tie and headed to the living room, where Constance was waiting, with the visitor. "Mr. Montgomery, this is Louisa Campbell," Constance introduced. Oliver turned and found himself facing a woman of about 35, with brown hair tied in a simple bun, intelligent eyes, and a serene smile. There was something immediately reassuring about her presence. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Montgomery," Louisa said, extending her hand in a firm, professional handshake. Something in the simplicity of that gesture, in the honesty of those eyes, made Oliver feel, for the first time in days, that perhaps the future wasn't as bleak as he had imagined. 3 months had passed since the incident with Victoria and Raphael. The Montgomery estate, once a stage for conspiracy and betrayal, now breathed an atmosphere of renewal. Much of this change was due to the presence of Louisa Campbell, the nurse hired to care for Mrs. Eleanor. Louisa had brought not only her professional skills, but also a refreshing energy that was contagious to everyone around her. Under her care, Mrs. Eleanor's health showed significant improvement. The elderly woman, who once spent most of her time confined to her room, now took short walks in the garden every morning, always accompanied by Louisa. On that sunny September morning, Oliver watched the two women from his office window. His mother, leaning on a cane, and Louisa's steady arm, was smiling as she admired the orchids blooming in the conservatory. There was a lightness about Mrs. Eleanor that he hadn't seen in years. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Thompson is on the line," his secretary announced. Gregory Thompson had been the Montgomery family's lawyer for over a decade, a discreet and efficient man who had taken on the task of verifying all legal documentation after the discovery of Victoria and Raphael's plan. "Gregory, good morning. Any news?" "Good news, Oliver. We've managed to identify and rectify all the changes those two tried to make to your documents. The forged prenuptial agreement was never registered, and the original copies of your will are secure." "Excellent work," Oliver replied, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "And what about that clerk at the records office Raphael mentioned? Were you able to identify him?" "Yes, he was a recently hired legal assistant. He confessed that Raphael had bribed him to facilitate the registration of altered documents. The young man was fired, and the office has implemented new security protocols." Oliver thanked him and hung up, reflecting on how narrowly he had escaped a meticulously planned trap. If it weren't for his mother's intuition and Constance's loyalty. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Louisa, bringing Mrs. Eleanor back from her morning walk. "Excuse me, Mr. Montgomery. Your mother insisted on coming to greet you before her morning rest," Louisa said with her usual serene smile. "Mother, you look wonderful today," Oliver observed, standing up to help her sit down. "It's the fresh air, son, and the pleasant company." Mrs. Eleanor cast an affectionate glance at Louisa. "This young woman has a magic touch. Ever since she started that special physical therapy, my pains have decreased considerably." Louisa smiled, visibly pleased with the compliment, but maintaining her professional demeanor. "It's just technique and persistence, Mrs. Eleanor, and you are an exemplary patient." "Nonsense, child. You have a gift." The elderly woman turned to her son. "Oliver, I've invited Louisa to have dinner with us tonight, not as a nurse, but as our guest." Oliver noticed the slight blush on Louisa's cheeks. It was the first time he had seen her show any sign of discomfort. "I told Mrs. Eleanor it wouldn't be appropriate, but she insisted," Louisa explained. "My mother can be quite persuasive when she wants to be," Oliver commented, smiling. "It will be a pleasure to have you as our guest, Louisa. In fact, it's the least we can do to thank you for everything you've done for us." Dinner that evening marked a subtle shift in the mansion's dynamic. Without her nurse's uniform, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress, Louisa revealed herself to be an interesting and insightful conversationalist. She spoke about her nursing education, her years working at Mount Sinai, and her volunteer experiences in underserved communities on the outskirts of New York City. "Why did you leave the hospital?" Oliver asked, genuinely curious. "From what I understand, you had a respectable position there." Louisa took a sip of wine before answering. "I was looking for something more personal. At the hospital, I saw dozens of patients a day, but I could rarely truly follow someone's progress. I wanted to make a real difference in one person's life, not just treat symptoms. And are you achieving that here?" Mrs. Eleanor's question carried an insinuation that did not go unnoticed. "Without a doubt," Louisa replied with sincerity. "Seeing your daily progress, Mrs. Eleanor, has been extremely rewarding." The conversation flowed naturally for hours, and Oliver was surprised to realize how long it had been since he had enjoyed such pleasant and authentic company. There were no artifices in Louisa, no hidden agenda, just a genuine and comforting presence. In the following weeks, dinners with Louisa became a regular event. Gradually, the line between her professional role and her personal presence in the family's life began to blur. Oliver found himself seeking her out, even when he wasn't visiting his mother, and their conversations stretched longer and longer, touching on topics beyond Mrs. Eleanor's health. "You never told me why you chose nursing," Oliver commented one afternoon as they walked through the garden after lunch. Louisa hesitated for a moment before replying. When I was 16, my grandmother got sick. It was a degenerative disease, and the doctors gave her only a few months to live. My mother, who was a teacher, decided to care for her at home. She paused, looking at the garden flowers as if drawing strength to continue. I watched the way my mother cared for her, with so much love and dignity. My grandmother lived not for months, but for 2 years beyond the doctor's predictions. When she finally left us, it was in peace, surrounded by love. It was then that I realized the transformative power of genuine care. Oliver was touched by the story. Your grandmother was lucky to have your family. Yes, Louisa agreed, and I see that Mrs. Eleanor has the same luck. The love you show for her, Oliver, is something rare these days. After what happened with Victoria, I realized how selfish I was. I was so focused on my own happiness that I nearly put my mother in danger. Don't be so hard on yourself. You were deceived by calculating people. The important thing is that when you discovered the truth, you acted correctly. There was an understanding in her eyes that made Oliver feel accepted. It wasn't pity, but a genuine empathy that touched him deeply. As they walked back to the mansion, their fingers accidentally brushed, sending a wave of electricity through Oliver's body. For a brief moment he felt the urge to take Louisa's hand, but he held back, unsure if it would be appropriate. On the veranda, Constance was waiting with a worried expression. Mr. Montgomery, I tried not to interrupt, but there's an important call. It's Mr. Richard, your partner. He sounds quite agitated. Oliver excused himself from Louisa and hurried to his office. Richard Montgomery rarely showed agitation. Something serious must have happened. Richard, what's wrong? Oliver, I just received some disturbing information. Victoria and Raphael are back in New York. Oliver felt his stomach sink. How did you find out? My wife saw them shopping on Madison Avenue yesterday afternoon. It seems they're no longer hiding their presence in the city. I understand. Thanks for the warning, Richard. I'll take the necessary precautions. After hanging up, Oliver remained motionless for several long minutes, absorbing the news. The thought of Victoria and Raphael's return brought back painful memories, but also a more immediate concern. Were they planning some kind of revenge? That night, Oliver shared the news with Constance and instructed the security team to tighten surveillance of the mansion. He decided not to mention anything to his mother, fearing it would worry her unnecessarily and compromise her recovery. Louisa, however, noticed his restlessness during dinner. Did something happen, Oliver? You seem distant today. He hesitated, but something in Louisa's gaze made him feel he could trust her. Richard informed me that Victoria and Raphael are back in town. Louisa nodded, immediately understanding the gravity of the situation. She knew the whole story, as Mrs. Eleanor had shared the details of the incident during their physical therapy sessions. Do you think they might try something against your family again? I don't know. I hope they've learned their lesson, but people like them rarely give up so easily. Louisa covered Oliver's hand with her own, a simple but profoundly comforting gesture. You're not alone. To this time. I'll be on the lookout for anything suspicious, especially concerning Mrs. Eleanor. The touch of her hand was warm and secure, conveying a confidence that Oliver hadn't felt in a long time. He turned his palm up, intertwining his fingers with hers in an almost instinctive movement. Thank you, Louisa. Your presence in this house has been more important than you can imagine. A soft blush colored Louisa's cheeks, but she didn't pull her hand away. Her eyes, fixed on Oliver's, seemed to communicate feelings that words did not yet dare to express. The next morning, the tension in the mansion was palpable. Oliver had instructed all staff to immediately report any contact or attempted communication from Victoria or Raphael. Security at the gates was reinforced, and a more rigorous identity verification system was implemented. Around 11 a.m., while Oliver was in a video conference with investors, Constance hurried into his office. Pardon the interruption, sir, but a strange email just arrived for Louisa. She asked that you see it immediately. Oliver excused himself from the meeting participants and followed Constance to Louisa's room. The nurse was sitting in front of her laptop, a look of concern on her face. "I received this a few minutes ago," she explained, showing the screen to Oliver. The email was from an unknown address and had the subject line, "Medical Emergency, Mount Sinai Hospital." The message requested that Louisa come to the hospital urgently for a consultation about a patient she had left in their care before coming to work for the Montgomerys. "This might seem legitimate at first glance," Louisa observed, "but I never left patients at Mount Sinai. When I left, I transitioned all my cases. Besides, the hospital would never communicate like this without specific patient details or an official contact for follow-up." Oliver felt a shiver run down his spine. "It's a trap. They're trying to lure you out of the mansion." "The question is, why?" Louisa asked, her voice calm despite the situation. "Perhaps they've realized your importance to this family," suggested Constance, who remained at the door. "Or maybe they want to get you away to have easier access to Mrs. Eleanor." Oliver nodded gravely. "Whatever the reason, we need to be extremely cautious now. Louisa, please do not leave the property under any circumstances. If you need anything from outside, Sebastian or one of the security guards can get it." "Don't worry," Louisa assured him. "I have no intention of falling into this trap. My priority is Mrs. Eleanor's safety and yours." The look they exchanged at that moment was charged with something deeper than professional concern. It was a silent commitment, a promise of mutual protection that transcended the roles of employer and employee. That same afternoon, while Louisa was conducting a physical therapy session with Mrs. Eleanor, the phone in the room rang. As the elderly woman was focused on her exercises, Louisa answered. "Montgomery residence, Louisa speaking." There was a moment of silence before a female voice replied, "So you're Oliver's new acquisition. I must admit he has varied taste." "Who is this?" Louisa asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Someone who knows Oliver much better than you ever will, dear. Tell him that no one humiliates me and gets away with it, no one." The call ended abruptly. Louisa stood motionless for a few seconds, the phone still in her hand, before composing herself and turning her attention back to Mrs. Eleanor, who had fortunately not noticed anything unusual. Later, when she reported the incident to Oliver, she saw his face pale. "It was Victoria," he confirmed. "There's no doubt." "She sounded quite resentful," Louisa observed. "Narcissistic people like her don't easily accept rejection or defeat. What else did she say?" "Just that no one humiliates her and gets away with it." Louisa hesitated before continuing. "Oliver, I think we should consider taking Mrs. Eleanor to a safer place until this situation is resolved." "No," he replied firmly. "I won't let them drive us out of our own home. Besides, my mother is finally regaining her health and vitality. An abrupt move could negatively affect her." "I understand your reluctance, but her safety must be the priority. And that's exactly why I'm doubling the security here. I've hired a specialized firm that will start tomorrow. The mansion will have 24-hour surveillance, and no one will enter without undergoing a strict verification." Louisa nodded, recognizing the determination in Oliver's eyes. "In that case, I suggest we also implement a special protocol for Mrs. Eleanor's medications. I will prepare all doses myself and keep the medicine in a secure location." The plan was put into action immediately. The new security team took up its post the next morning, and additional cameras were installed at all strategic points on the property. Oliver cancelled all his business trips, determined to stay close to his family during this period of uncertainty. As the days passed without further incident, the initial tension began to subside. Mrs. Eleanor, oblivious to the real reason behind the enhanced security measures, continued her recovery routine under Louisa's attentive care. On one particularly pleasant evening, as Oliver and Louisa shared a glass of wine on the veranda after Mrs. Eleanor had retired, the conversation naturally drifted to more personal matters. "I never asked about your family, Louisa. Do your parents still live in New York?" She smiled melancholically. "My father passed away when I was 19. My mother lives in Philadelphia now, with my younger sister. I also have a brother in Chicago." "You must miss them." "Yes, but we talk often. And to be honest, I've found a sense of home here that I haven't felt in a long time." The look they exchanged under the moonlight was charged with restrained emotion. "Louisa, Oliver began, but was interrupted by the sound of his cell phone. It was Sebastian, the driver, with alarming news. A suspicious man had been seen photographing the mansion from across the street. When confronted by one of the security guards, he fled in a black car with no license plates. "They're watching us," Oliver concluded, the tension returning to his face. "Planning their next move." "What do we do now?" Louisa asked, her voice firm despite her concern. "We go on the offensive," Oliver replied with determination. "I'm not going to wait for them to attack first this time." The Montgomery estate transformed into a fortress in the days that followed. Oliver hired 2 private investigators, trusted former FBI agents, to track Victoria and Raphael's movements. The security team was reinforced again, with guards strategically positioned at all vulnerable points of the property. Meanwhile, Louisa remained vigilant, rarely leaving Mrs. Eleanor alone. The elderly woman, sensing the growing tension around her, finally confronted her son during breakfast. "Oliver, enough beating around the bush. What's going on? Why all this security? It feels like we're preparing for a war." Oliver exchanged a look with Louisa before sighing in resignation. "Victoria and Raphael are back in town, Mother. We have reason to believe they might try something against our family." Instead of showing fear, Mrs. Eleanor lifted, her chin in a defiant gesture reminiscent of her former strength. "We've faced those 2 before and won. I don't see why it would be any different now." "The difference is that this time they're driven by revenge, not just greed," Oliver explained. "Desperate people are more dangerous." "And more prone to making mistakes," Louisa added softly, "which could work in our favor." That same afternoon, Richard Montgomery appeared at the mansion with valuable information. In his office, Oliver listened intently as his friend detailed what he had discovered. "Victoria and Raphael aren't just back. They're planning something big," Richard explained. "A contact of mine saw them meeting with Chester Price." Oliver frowned. Chester Price was a businessman of questionable reputation, known for his aggressive tactics and dubious connections. He and Oliver had clashed a few times in the past over important contracts. "Price has always wanted to get his hands on my companies," Oliver reflected. "It doesn't surprise me that he's teamed up with those 2. There's more," Richard continued. "Raphael got a job at the law firm that represents the Price Group, and Victoria has been seen entering and leaving Chester's mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut several times." "So it's a 3-pronged plan," Oliver concluded. "Victoria provides personal information about me and my family, Raphael contributes legal knowledge to exploit vulnerabilities, and Price finances the operation in exchange for a chance to weaken my business." "Exactly. And from what my informant found out, they plan to act soon." After Richard's departure, Oliver met with Louisa and Constance to devise a counter-offensive plan. It was time to turn the tables. "We have a crucial advantage," Louisa observed. "They don't know that we're aware of their intentions. We can use that to our advantage." "I agree," Oliver said. "And I have an idea how to do it." The plan was bold but potentially devastating if executed correctly. Instead of just defending themselves, they would set a trap for Victoria and her accomplices. The next morning, Oliver strategically leaked false information through one of his aides. He would be traveling abroad in the coming days to finalize a major international acquisition. In reality, he would not leave the mansion. Simultaneously, Louisa replied to the suspicious email she had received days earlier, indicating that she would be at Mount Sinai Hospital the following afternoon for the supposed emergency. "Are you sure about this?" Oliver asked, concerned. "It's too risky." "Don't worry," Louisa reassured him. "I won't go alone. Sebastian will drive me, and your friend Peter from the FBI will be watching us. Besides, I've already contacted Mount Sinai's security department. They're aware of the situation and will give us all the support we need." The plan began to take shape. If Victoria and Raphael took the bait, they would be simultaneously luring Louisa out of the mansion and believing that Oliver would be away, creating in their perception the perfect scenario for an invasion. Meanwhile, Mrs. Eleanor insisted on playing her own part. "I'll be the perfect bait," she declared with surprising determination. "They'll think I'm alone and vulnerable. When they try to approach, we'll catch them red-handed." "Mother, there's no way I'm letting you put yourself in danger," Oliver protested. "Son, I've spent my whole life taking care of this family. I'm not going to hide while people like Victoria and Raphael threaten everything we've built." After much discussion, they reached a compromise. Mrs. Eleanor would stay in the mansion as planned, but with reinforced security discreetly positioned in her room and the adjacent hallways. Additionally, extra cameras would be installed, allowing Oliver to monitor everything from a secure room. On the planned day, everything was meticulously prepared. Louisa left for the hospital as arranged, escorted by Sebastian and secretly monitored by Peter's team. Oliver, supposedly at the airport on his way abroad, was actually hidden in the mansion's security room, watching every move through multiple cameras. As expected, shortly after Louisa's departure, the security sensors detected movement on the property's perimeter. Through the cameras, Oliver saw a man who was not Raphael sneak up to the back wall. Using professional equipment, he disabled one of the sensors with surprising ease and created an entry point. "They hired a professional," Oliver muttered to himself, involuntarily admiring his adversary's preparation. The intruder, after entering the property, opened a small side gate to give access to two other figures, Victoria and Raphael. The three spoke briefly before separating. The professional intruder headed for the main security system, while Victoria and Raphael advanced toward the house. Oliver maintained constant contact with his team through discreet communicators. Following his instructions, the security guards allowed the intruders to advance, creating the illusion that their plan was working. Meanwhile, at Mount Sinai Hospital, Louisa waited in the reception area of the wing indicated in the suspicious email. As expected, no one showed up for the supposed emergency. However, upon returning to the parking lot with Sebastian, they were approached by a man whom Louisa immediately recognized from the photos Oliver had shown her, Chester Price. "Miss Campbell," he called, approaching with false cordiality, "could I have a word?" "That depends on the subject," Louisa replied coldly, as Sebastian positioned himself protectively by her side. "I have a proposal that might interest you, something much more lucrative than being a nurse at the Montgomery estate." At that moment, Peter and two FBI agents appeared, identifying themselves and requesting that Chester accompany them for questioning. The businessman, caught by surprise, tried to maintain his composure. "There must be some mistake. I was just talking to the young lady." "Curious that you would know her, considering you've never been introduced," Peter retorted, as one of his agents discreetly photographed the scene. "Now, if you could come with us without making a scene." Back at the mansion, Victoria and Raphael had managed to get inside, believing they had disabled the main security system. They moved silently towards Mrs. Eleanor's room, where the elderly woman was resting, apparently alone. "Hello, Mrs. Eleanor," Victoria greeted with false sweetness as she entered the room. "Did you miss me?" The elderly woman showed no surprise, merely lifting her eyes from her book with an impassive expression. "Victoria and Raphael? What an unpleasant surprise." "I'm sorry you feel that way," Victoria replied sarcastically. "We came to pay a courtesy visit. After all, family is family, isn't it?" "You are not, and never will be, part of this family," Mrs. Eleanor declared firmly. Raphael stepped forward, impatient. "Enough talk. We came to settle some pending matters. Your son humiliated us and threw us out of here like criminals. And isn't that exactly what you are?" Mrs. Eleanor's voice maintained an impressive calm. "You tried to poison me. You planned to steal my son's fortune. In my day, that was considered a crime." "Details, details," Victoria scoffed, approaching the bed threateningly. "Now we're back, and this time we won't leave empty-handed." "And what exactly do you expect to get here?" the elderly woman asked. "For starters, that recording your son mentioned," Raphael explained. "Then some documents that could be compromising for us if they fall into the wrong hands." "And you think I know where those things are kept?" "No, but you'll be our guest until Oliver returns from his trip." Victoria smiled maliciously. "I'm sure he'll do anything to ensure the well-being of his dear little mother." At that moment, the lights in the room brightened, and a familiar voice echoed through the space. "I certainly would, Victoria, including preparing a proper reception for you." Oliver entered the room, accompanied by two security guards and an NYPD detective. Victoria and Raphael froze, stunned. "But you were traveling," Victoria stammered. "Apparently not everything you hear is true," Oliver replied calmly. "A lesson you should have learned the first time." Raphael, recovering from the initial shock, tried to maintain his composure. "This is absurd. We just came to visit Mrs. Eleanor. There's nothing illegal about that." "Breaking and entering, conspiracy, attempted extortion," the detective enumerated, "not to mention the professional intruder you hired who is already in custody. And we have everything on tape, audio, and video." Just then, Louisa entered the room, breathless after running from the car to the mansion. Her eyes met Oliver's, conveying a silent message of relief at seeing him safe and sound. "Chester, Price has also been detained," she announced. "He tried to bribe me in the hospital parking lot." Victoria's face turned even paler. "Chester, but he assured us that he wouldn't get caught," Oliver completed. "He's not as smart as he thinks. None of you are." As the police officers led Victoria and Raphael away, the ex-fiancé shot a final resentful glare at Louisa. "So you're the replacement. Enjoy it while you can, dear. Men like Oliver get bored easily." Louisa remained dignified, ignoring the provocation. When the intruders were finally taken away, a relieved silence hung over the room. "Is it over?" asked Mrs. Eleanor, her voice finally betraying a slight tremor. "Yes, Mother, this time it's really over," Oliver assured her, sitting beside her on the bed. "They will face multiple criminal charges. With the evidence we have, they won't escape easily." "And Chester Price?" the elderly woman inquired. "He will also answer for his crimes," Louisa affirmed, approaching to check Mrs. Eleanor's vital signs. "Are you all right? Your heart is racing." "Just the excitement of the moment, my dear." The elderly woman smiled, taking Louisa's and Oliver's hands and joining them over her own. "Now you two have a lot to talk about, don't you think?" Oliver and Louisa exchanged surprised glances, but didn't deny the matriarch's insinuation. Hours later, after all the formalities with the police were completed and Mrs. Eleanor had finally fallen asleep, Oliver and Louisa found themselves in the conservatory. The night was extraordinarily starry, as if the sky itself were celebrating the end of that turbulent chapter. "You were incredible today," Oliver commented, offering a glass of wine to Louisa. "Facing Chester Price like that. It was nothing compared to what you and Mrs. Eleanor did," she replied, accepting the drink. "Your mother has a courage that many young people would envy. She's always been like that, strong, determined, intuitive." Oliver smiled, looking up at the stars. "Do you know what she told me when I put her to bed today? That you brought light back into our home." Louisa blushed slightly. "She's very kind." "No, she's sincere. And I agree with her." Oliver turned to face her directly. "You brought more than professional care to this house, Louisa. You brought genuine compassion, honesty, strength, things I had forgotten existed after what happened with Victoria." "Oliver, No, let me finish." He placed his glass on the table and took her hands in his. "I know I started getting close to you as your employer, and I completely understand if you find this inappropriate. But I can't hide what I feel anymore. These months living with you have shown me what a true connection between two people is." Louisa's heart raced. For months, she had fought against her growing feelings for Oliver, convinced that the social gap between them and her professional position made any relationship impossible. "I've always surrounded myself with people interested only in what I could offer materially," Oliver continued. "Victoria was just the most extreme of them. You were the first person in a long time who saw me for who I really am, beyond the money and the name." "Because who you really are is worth much more than your bank account," Louisa replied softly. "I saw how you care for your mother, how you treat your employees with respect, how you took responsibility when you realized your mistake with Victoria. That reveals your character, Oliver, and it was that man I fell in love with." The confession hung in the air like a perfect musical note. Oliver moved closer slowly, giving Louisa all the time in the world to pull back if she wished, but she didn't pull back. Their lips met in a gentle, almost reverent kiss, so different from the manufactured passion he had known with Victoria. When they parted, they were both smiling, slightly embarrassed but undeniably happy. "And now?" Louisa asked. "I can't continue to be your mother's nurse if we're involved." "I agree. It would be a conflict of interest." Oliver thought for a moment. "Dr. Alistair can recommend another professional, someone with your qualifications if possible." "And what about us? Don't want people to think I took advantage of the situation or that I'm interested in your fortune." "People will always talk, Louisa. What matters is what we know to be true." He caressed her face tenderly. "Besides, my mother adores you, and she has a sixth sense for people." Louisa laughed. "That's true, she practically planned all of this. Typical of her. Always 2 steps ahead of all of us." In the months that followed, many changes occurred at the Montgomery estate. Victoria, Raphael, and Chester Price faced trial and were convicted of their crimes. A new nurse, equally competent but considerably older, took over Mrs. Eleanor's care, allowing Louisa to pursue her career independently. Louisa decided to open a home care clinic for the elderly in underserved areas, an old dream that Oliver encouraged her to pursue. The project quickly gained recognition and began to transform lives in neglected communities. As for Oliver and Louisa, their relationship blossomed naturally, based on mutual respect and genuine admiration. He learned from her simplicity and authenticity. She discovered at his side that not every powerful man was corrupted by his wealth. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, as they walked hand through Central Park, Oliver asked the question that had been lingering between them for months. "Louisa Campbell, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not by contract, not for personal gain, but for true love." With tears in her eyes, she gave him the only sincere yes he had ever received in his life. At the mansion, upon hearing the news, Mrs. Eleanor smiled with satisfaction. From her armchair by the window, she watched the garden where so many plots had unfolded. The orchids bloomed more vibrantly than ever, as if celebrating the triumph of truth over lies, of authentic love over unbridled ambition. "Finally," the matriarch whispered to herself, "my son has found someone who sees his heart, not his wallet." And as the sun set over the Montgomery estate, a new light was kindled, the promise of a future built not on appearances and interests, but on the most solid of foundations: truth. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Oliver, Mrs. Eleanor, and Louisa has touched your hearts. To follow more emotional journeys like this one, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking the link on the left. If you enjoyed this tale of love, betrayal, and redemption set in New York City, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships. Share in the comments which moment touched you the most in this story. Was it Victoria's plan, Mrs. Eleanor's courage, or perhaps the genuine love that blossomed between Oliver and Louisa? We look forward to reading your impressions and will continue to bring you content that moves and inspires.